It all started when one small family took another trip to the nearest marketplace. The woman turned to her son, but he did not answer her, as the boy had fallen sound asleep during the trip. The mother was surprised that he fell asleep so quickly, but the father remarked that the son was probably tired from playing all evening. The mother turned to her father and reminded him that she had told him to be moderate with the games, but her father only laughed at the situation. Suddenly, the irreparable happened. An oncoming car flew at them at high speed, which will cause an accident. Shortly after this tragedy, the boy found himself in the hospital. All the doctors responsible for human lives started talking among themselves. The doctor asked about the boy's parents, to which the nurse replied that the mother had died in the accident on the spot and the father was unconscious. Even though the child was buckled up in the back seat, he was also in a dangerous situation. Therefore, the doctors decided to send him to surgery as soon as possible, while there was still time. At that moment, the boy regained consciousness, not realizing what had happened to him and where he was. But suddenly, he heard voices unknown to him. They spoke of how the chosen warriors should listen to him, as he would use the last of his powers to seal their souls in a better state. In the future, they would be able to prove to the world that they were heirs to the elders of the angels. As the young man tried to discern the angel's silhouette, the angel was telling them to complete their soul journey and save the free energy safely. The young man didn't fully understand what this unknown voice was saying to him, but he sensed that it had a perfectly gentle timbre. The voice called him Tyler. A long time has passed since the accident. All the friends and acquaintances of the boy's parents visited him and then took him in. Someone asked Tyler if he would play at home all day again, to which he replied that he was still deaf. The interlocutor wondered what was wrong with that, since Tyler had finally discovered the swordsman class. Why is he angry? He said that he could play soccer with his friends once in a while because every day it was the same. It was boring. After a while, the guy went outside and thought about the fact that he definitely wouldn't want to play soccer, since he doesn't like to sweat. Suddenly, he heard unknown voices talking amongst themselves, telling the guys not to fight. Tyler was 17 years old at the time. One of his friends said that every day was hard enough for Tyler. The young man just thought about it, watching them, and realized he was used to it. It was more than 10 years after that accident, and he began to hear the voices of those four people. He thought they were his imaginary friends. A woman with an exquisite sisterly sense of Anas, the gregarious and friendly Trayman, the flashy but determined Clinch, and the very adult intellectual Marcel. It was after that incident, as soon as he woke up, that all these guys had been following him. In that time, he was able to get used to them. He began to realize that different characters for different voices was strange, but that's why he called them his relatives. Even though they were not living people, thanks to them he was able to survive the sadness of losing his mother. After his daily studies, the young man liked to just sit on the floor, pick up a joystick, and realize that the fantasy world of PlayStation was now waiting for him. The guy made sure he was able to pass for all the heroes: the sage, the fighter, the thief, and the archer. And the coolest thing is that by completing all the quests for the four classes, the swordsman class is unlocked, which is considered very difficult to obtain. He realized that the game is complicated and no one has discovered this class yet, but he managed to do it. So he was happy that the long-awaited day had come. The most logical explanation for why he was able to be so successful at this game, unlike the others, is that he spent 2 years of his life on it. Clinch asked the guy why he only plays one game, since there are tons of other popular games. To which the guy started to reply. He fell in love with this game because of the ribbon card. That is the legendary title. And about the rest of the game, it wasn't that big of a deal. When he heard the cheers, he distinctly remembered that moment and was a little surprised by something. The spirit asked him what was wrong. He replied that something was wrong with the game. The swordsman already had an established name, David. One of the spirits confirmed that the others had their names set too. The guy didn't fully understand what was going on, as there were no guides for this game. After all, no one could spend 2 years of life to reach this level and get this swordsman. He wondered if perhaps this hidden class was somehow different from the others. Suddenly, the game said that it has been searching for a long time for 5 heroes who can save Ittara. She summons him to Italy and asks him to defeat the Demon King as the hero of Ittara. After that, an unknown voice from the game told him that it would give him the blessing of Ittara. In that instant, the joystick fell to the floor and the boy simply disappeared from the room, falling into a game that would change his future. Time jump. The young man was greatly surprised, not understanding what had happened or why he found himself in such a place. After recovering a little from the shock, he wondered how this even happened and why everything around him was so colorful and bright. With each turn of his head, he realized he had never seen a place like this, but he felt as if he had been in this building or dwelling before. He noticed a sign that said he had to activate the quest after checking his status and finding items in his inventory. Looking closer at the holograms, he realized that this was the home of David the swordsman. Had he really become that hero? He thought he might be at the swordsman's launching pad. After opening the status, he made sure he was level 1. The stats weren't that high, and there wasn't much mana. Everything was as usual, but he couldn't figure out what the point of this character was. He had other questions, though. Why had he gotten into this world, or rather game? Is this the same getting into another world as an Isekai? And what was the blessing of the goddess? He asked the intellectual Marcel if he knew anything about it. But none of his imaginary friends spoke to him. The boy wondered why. Suddenly he realized that he hadn't heard these guys once since he had entered this world. Had he lost them in the transition? The young man realized that this had never happened before that moment, but he couldn't figure out what had happened. He decided that the first thing to do was to go into town to gather information and find out his location. But before that, there was one more thing to do. You can't forget about the hidden quest that the system issued. The guy went into the woods to explore the area further, and also fight the local monsters that live near his cabin in order to clear the area from the likes of them. The young man made sure that even though he was at first level, he could still do something about these creatures, like dodging blows. So of course, what's a swordsman without the best justice skills? Taking out his sword, he was about to test how sharp this blade from earlier in the game was. Testing all the abilities of the sword, he made sure that the weapon was indeed sharp. While he was fighting, he was suddenly attacked by another troll from the side. The guy immediately activated his abilities and switched to melee mode. The young man realized that the ancient kendo techniques were finally coming in handy after all this time. Suddenly, he smelled what the goblin apparently didn't think was enough, as he attacked him from behind with long-range shots. The boy stopped in place, unsure of what to expect from this unusual goblin. The young man immediately realized that things were bad. He had met a goblin mage, and that was a big problem. The boy wondered what he could do to defeat the stone-throwing magician. He realized that the best solution was to get closer and closer to him, smashing the rocks flying at him. It worked, and the goblin mage was defeated. The system informed the boy that the quest had been completed. His task was to defeat 100 goblins, and as a reward he received a blessing ring. The young man decided to check what it did. He knew that if he read the journal 20 times at the starting area, it would unlock a hidden quest. He had spent a long time studying the game and the swordsman class, which was mostly similar to the others. He realized that there must be something unusual about a place like this. As he looked closer at the quests, he noticed that the first main quest was done, and it gave him a bunch of different bonuses. Each time the young man realized how his mood lifted when several quests appeared to be completed at once. But suddenly he felt someone's presence. Turning his head, he saw a 3-meter-sized troll. The guy wondered where a place like this got a boss from. He realized that when he went through the game, he didn't have a situation like this. The young man attacked the troll, applying his first ability slash. As he tried to do so, he realized it wasn't as simple as he thought. His ability to dodge punches hadn't gone anywhere, but he couldn't just pick up and run away from this place. The next time the giant thought to try to swat the guy again, he was sure he'd succeed this time. The young man realized that he should hurry up and think of something now. The system wrote that the blessing ring disarms the lethal damage once and is destroyed. The boy wondered what kind of power had just saved him. He realized that this troll was clearly unusual. Suddenly someone shouted, "Chain lightning!" And after saying that, the troll was roasted to a crisp. The boy wondered if it was magic, but who had used it? There was no one around. The unknown man asked the swordsman what he was even doing. The protagonist asks why he, who has defeated the ogres many times, can't do it now. His friend wondered that it just couldn't be, because this guy seemed very familiar to him. Suddenly the orc tried to attack the guy, wanting to prove that he was weaker than him. Suddenly, the young man realized that he should immediately gather himself to defeat such a powerful opponent. The hero applied his crowning trick, a double crescent cutter. The boy began to realize that now he had to cope with such monsters quite difficult. But in the near future, he would have to learn everything necessary to defeat such creatures. As soon as the young man had dealt with the monster, his friend, who was standing nearby, praised him, saying, "Good job, David." The boy was surprised and asked again, "Is it really him, Marcel?" The guy grinned, saying that he was also called Sage Marcel, and added that he was now level 9. So this character joined David's team. David asked if he was indeed the same Marcel. His friend answered in the affirmative. The boy then scrutinized Marcel, noting that he looked exactly as he had imagined. Marcel thought it looked as if David were talking to a pet. David asked if the others appeared the same way Marcel did, to which he replied that he didn't know until the end, but probably yes. Marcel began to explain that he felt himself separated from David when he got into the game, and then woke up already in Sage's starting spot. David suggested that if Marcel was a sage, then the other classes he gave them in the game also had similar incarnations. Marcel agreed that that was probably the case. However, the boy realized that the energy in this world was different from what they knew from the game. It felt different, like looking into a screen. Marcel confirmed that it made sense. Tyler wondered if the warrior should appear after the 4th city and noted the unusually high number of monsters. The boy was surprised and informed his friend that he had noticed something strange in the distance. David suggested that Marcel look in the distance where there might be something. Marcel paid attention and reflected that his friend was probably right. Soon they approached the place to find out more about the glow that had attracted them. As the two got closer to the structure, they realized that it was something incredible. The stone was composed entirely of lithography. The kid asked if she'd been in a place like this before, because Marcel was just as shocked as he was. Marcel began to move closer to the stone, feeling the magical power emanating from this structure. David told Tyler to move a little farther away from the statue. Suddenly, the statue lit up, and they realized that something incredibly important was happening. David added that the illuminated letters definitely meant something. The boy explained that he had just tried to channel power into the lithograph, and it had reacted, which meant that it had been enchanted earlier. The two noticed something unusual, and the kid realized that they were about to be told the backstory. Long ago, when Ontario was only 293 years old, a black hole appeared in the northernmost part of Laxemia. On the other side of the hole lived demons, who, taking their monsters with them, attacked the human world. Only the hero who received the blessing of the goddess, along with 4 other heroes and the armies of the 4 great kingdoms, was able to drive away the demons. But the war did not end there. Their world has been infiltrated by the king of evil, the Demon King. He contaminated the pure mana, turning it into black mana. That is why the shield-bearer hero must save the world before the black mana fills it completely. It's up to him to save the entourage from the greatest demon of all. And of course, you will have to completely exterminate the demons and their king, because Swordsman Kuron will truly be the greatest villain for humans. The kid realized that something didn't add up in those words, and so he asked Marcel what it could be. David started to explain that, come to think of it, the Demon King was supposed to show up in the second half of the game, but the lithograph said he had already arrived. And what's most interesting is that initially there was no war. Tyler agreed and thought about the sheer number of monsters, sudden wars, and the advent of lithography. David wondered what was even going on in this place, beginning to realize that the game was following a slightly different plot. Marcel turned his attention to him, not knowing what he was thinking. David replied that he had no other cause for concern. The kid said adventures are more fun when obstacles are overcome altogether, and asked Marcel if that wasn't the case. Then he added that they should hurry up and go forward to the mesmerizing and cool adventures. But Tyler asked him to wait a little longer. David wondered what a malleable friend he had after all. The young man also noted that this wasn't the only oddity. Why would swordsman David leave a message in this particular place? It was as if he knew they would pass through here at some point. Tyler agreed that it looked very suspicious. Much time has passed since these events, and now creatures like wolves and goats continue to devour all life in this world. The young man decides to level up by killing such creatures. With each of his strikes, it became increasingly easier to defeat the monsters he encountered as he continued to improve. After trying to kill one of them, he suddenly realized that although he had dealt with a few, there were still a few left. But he didn't expect to be chased by a whole big pack of these creatures when he tried to kill at least a couple of them. They were all very angry with him because he had killed one of their brethren. The boy had never thought he would see so many of these creatures. He soon realized that he had to escape as quickly as possible, so he decided to jump up to one of the cliff edges. After that, he looked down and wondered why there were so many of these creatures. After all, he still had a long way to go to raise his level if he kept this up. Even so, he realized that he and Marcel had a wonderful plan to handle the situation coherently and quickly. So he called his friend to act on the plan. Marcel, of course, understood how it was supposed to work, and said that the chain lightning would be ready any minute. After a bit of dialogue and training like this, they were able to corral a lot of animals into one pile to finish them all off at once, using a minimal amount of mana. The boy wanted to praise his friend by saying, "Good job, Tyler," but the boy said it wasn't fair. He complained that he had such a hard time defeating monsters one at a time, and Marcel had gathered them all in one place. Marcel explained that he had a radius attack, and there was nowhere to buy potions nearby, so they should get out of here soon. David replied that even though he was in another world, he couldn't kill mobs properly. The young man said okay, let his friend forgive him because status is really important. By the way, after opening his status, he made sure that they were now at the second stage of the desert, and the first city of this world was after the third stage. And importantly, it was worth saving mana, as there was only one potion left. Suddenly, the two heard unusual sounds and realized that something dangerous was about to threaten them. One of these great beasts smiled and grinned, saying that now he understood where he had smelled the dirt from. It was just them. They'd turned on his subordinates. It was a level 20 robo-werewolf. The boys were surprised that they were able to meet the great werewolf, for it was indeed an impressive sight. The werewolf realized he shouldn't just throw words around and immediately sprang into action, throwing a large boulder at them. The boulder split in two, but as soon as the werewolf threw it, the guys immediately left that spot with their usual dodging techniques. The kid wondered why the werewolf showed up so early and why his level was many times higher than in the game. He told his friend that it was time to start fighting this monster, and Marcel agreed. They started attacking it together. The young man tried to immediately attack the werewolf so that it would have no chance of winning, but without knowing it, he made an unbelievable mistake. He hadn't thought of any plan on how he would attack with his friend, but he realized that the werewolf was also larger than him. The werewolf turned to him and asked what he was going to do with such a flimsy sword. But the guy turned out to have a plan, so he immediately started using the thunderbolt on his sword. The kid turned to Tyler and told him to hurry up and drink the potion and heal from such an explosive blow. Tyler immediately went into his inventory and pulled out a healing potion so he could drink it as quickly as possible. But the werewolf grabbed the potion and broke it into 3 pieces, making Tyler unable to drink it. In the end, the potion was simply broken by the werewolf. The boys suddenly thought, "Damn it, the last potion is gone." The werewolf laughed at them, saying how stupid people were for not realizing such simple things as that the enemy could approach them suddenly. After which he began to spark and realized that he now had to do his best for the greatest future of the wolves. Therefore, he didn't spare any mana and made every effort to kill these 2 people so that they wouldn't interfere with him and his subordinates in the future. After using magic along with the cry of the wolf, he was able to summon his legendary werewolf weapon. As he picked up that legendary weapon, he realized that this way he could show how cool he was. He also added that they were all fun, even though he himself was bored. So they showed up just in time. The young man, along with his friend, did a bit of banning and still decided to say that this was the first time he had seen such an attack from such a beast. He began to speculate that perhaps it was because he was a level higher than usual. His friend reminded him that they shouldn't get distracted as they had a battle going on. The werewolf did not rush forward immediately after receiving the weapon, and was now a rather powerful opponent for our hero and his friend. The kid said he would distract the enemy, at which point his partner would have to use magic. After that, they faced each other and realized that they were about to have a real man-to-man battle. The werewolf tried to regain control of his weapon so that he could rip this boy's head off at the opportune moment. Before doing so, he decided to play around a bit and show the kid how pathetic he was compared to him by slamming him right into the ground. There was quite an explosion afterward, and the hero's friend was very scared for Tyler, so he immediately tried to use magic to defend himself, saying that he would go to the rescue. He then started using the thunderbolt he had in reserve. The werewolf only laughed at such an attack, as the fortress nullified the damage of the enemy's initial magic until the next use for 2 minutes. Marcel reflected that even in the game, this skillet was too strong, but perhaps the next technique would at least have some effect on the enemy. At least he hoped so. The werewolf immediately rushed forward, realizing he had to do everything he could to defeat the guy who had just tried to overpower him with a lightning discharge. Our protagonist was very worried about his friend and advised him to immediately do a somersault or something similar. Realizing that his friend was unlikely to be able to do so, the hero rushed forward to thwart the werewolf. Tyler made it in time and was able to block the werewolf's Sakura, preventing him from overpowering his friend. The werewolf only chuckled as he looked at them both, thinking that they were also trying to protect each other. He thought it was a ridiculous prank. The kids started sweating profusely, realizing that if nothing was done, they'd both have to say goodbye to their lives. In an instant, the werewolf was able to use his Sakura and strength to break the guy's sword, which turned out to be not so sturdy. The young man stopped doubting the weakness of his sword, but also realized that now he had nothing to fight with. The werewolf showed the guy who was the real superior being by punching him in the face. He immediately flew away from the fight. Marcel, surprised by what had happened, shouted the hero's name, saying that he would make it through no matter what happened. The werewolf grabbed his hero friend by the throat, chuckling, and said it was for his belief in surface magic. The kid continued to choke the enemy, not doubting their victory for a second. At the last moment, he shouted to Tyler to do something, but the hero himself was at his worst and could do nothing at that moment. Marcel realized that he needed to act and applied regeneration with the staff he had in his hand. The werewolf said it was all useless and dropped the kid to the ground to realize his mistake. As soon as the monster dropped one of the humans, it took a closer look and realized that it must have missed something. Tyler was still alive and was even able to fully recover to save the wizard. Marcel told the guy that he was a fool and let him better run away faster from here. But the hero replied that his friend should not talk nonsense. As the werewolf watched all of this, he laughed out loud and said it was a lot of fun, as there were no humans in these places lately, and it was pretty boring without their interference. Now, though, as the werewolf said, things had changed, and he was having a lot of fun. After saying that, he activated the wolf fist on his weapon and tried to kill the two guys. Those two immediately realized their mistake and realized that they had to do everything possible to escape from such a blow, or both of them wouldn't survive. They soon managed to avoid being hit, but they were still hurt. The werewolf came up to them and said that cleverly they had tried to escape, but it wasn't enough. He also added that they act like real people, and crawling on all fours suits them better. The kid was doubting his abilities more and more, and wondering what he should do in such a situation. After all, he has no sword and nothing to fight with. His only option was to run away, taking Marcel with him. At least that's what he thought. Suddenly, he remembered his inventory and decided to check what might be useful in a battle with such a monster. Suddenly, he noticed that the secret quest emotional connection had been completed, and the reward was inseparability. The young man wondered what this inseparability meant and realized that now he might have to do something irrevocably important. He shouted, saying that it didn't matter what it was, as long as it provided a way to defeat the monster. At this point, the werewolf started attacking the kid to make him realize how hopeless and pitiful his situation was. The werewolf said that these stupid humans could only be called the best or highest beings in the chain of evolution, but that was actually a lie. The monster said they wouldn't be lonely when he sent them to the other world at once. Suddenly, the werewolf suffered some crushing blows. He wondered if these people had managed to survive his powerful blow. On the spot, he questioned what these tricks were that he hadn't seen other people do before. The young man wondered why this had happened at all and where he had gotten the robes and weapons from. He told the werewolf that he had gotten the inseparability skill and decided to take it. The boy wondered about inseparability. Wasn't that similar to what he had pondered earlier? Suddenly, the boy realized that it was the same feeling he had felt before, when they were all one. Apparently, the ability of inseparability was the same as in the normal world. The kid said that he could feel the power of the mage within him, so he wouldn't just stand still. The werewolf wasted no time in attacking the boy, saying, "He doesn't know anything! Well, what's he happy about, human?" The monster instantly applied the ability Squall of Wolf Fangs. The boy realized that he had become much stronger than before. That's why he did his best to defeat the werewolf. Clutching his sword tightly, the young man managed to shatter one of the werewolf's tricks, giving him no hope of conventional strength. In that instant, the monster was riddled with surprise, realizing that the guy had just repelled its attack. The young man suddenly realized, now he, along with Marcel, would finally start a real battle. Determinedly, he lunged forward, knowing he could handle it without any trouble. Approaching the enemy closely, the boy attacked lightning fast to take the werewolf by surprise. The werewolf and the boy looked at each other and realized that only the one with the strongest sense of superpower would win this fight. The boy screamed at the top of his voice, realizing that he would defeat the vicious werewolf that had attempted to take the lives of himself and his friend. After a brief skirmish, the werewolf felt weak, though not great, but obviously weak. He guessed that the sword had magical power, but it was unclear how this commoner, who was a weak novice, had gotten such power. The young man added, lest the enemy should give it a second thought, for he still faced a swift end. The boy, having cast 3 spells at once and combined them together, made it clear to his opponent that he should not hope for salvation. The enchantments rushed straight towards the werewolf, forming a true triangular beam of unprecedented shape. The beam went straight into the monster. The werewolf wondered how the boy had the strength to control so many powerful techniques at once, and even though the werewolf turned out to be truly formidable, it still couldn't compare to our protagonist. The boy, without hesitation, decided to finally finish the creature and gain experience for it. He attacked again to finish off the werewolf, for he had really abused him and his friend. With each passing second, the monster realized his imminent defeat more and more clearly. He couldn't figure out why the hell this kid was so strong. However, the werewolf would not soon learn the answer to this question, for the boy had just overpowered him. Marcel told Tyler that they were able to defeat that crazy werewolf, to which he replied, "Yep, they finally did it!" The boy was about to discuss further plans when he suddenly began to faint and slump to the ground. The worried friend asked what had happened to Tyler. He wondered what was wrong and why the young man had suddenly collapsed to the ground when they had just won. The system explained that this ability had a side effect. After using it, there was a loss of consciousness. And also the inseparability had come to an end. The young man realized that his strength had suddenly dried up, but it was unclear why. The boy lay on the ground, not knowing how to get up. If he lay there any longer, the other wolves would soon come and devour him. Still, his friend managed to bring Tyler to his senses, pulling his consciousness back to normal. Marcel asked what had happened to him. When he woke up, the boy realized what was wrong. He had simply run out of mana. He realized how much mana he had consumed. Marcel thought that this very inseparability was indeed dangerous. His older friend pulled out another potion to heal Tyler and replenish his mana so that he would come to his senses. Also, Marcel reflected that however one shouldn't use inseparability for nothing, as it could be very risky. One of the demonic co-conspirators took a closer look at what was happening, realizing that this could prove to be extremely interesting information. The shapeshifter motioned to the high priest, informing him that, according to Tantar's report, he had accomplished absolutely every mission. The Lord came close and said, "That's how it is. Where is Tantar himself?" To which the werewolf replied that the madman had declared his return as soon as he had disposed of the soft-bodied. The power of the weapon was better than expected. The Lord thundered, "Glorious. But then have him gather the rest of the Big Four and tell them that the heroes have reappeared." The werewolf was surprised and asked again, "Didn't the heroes already die about 100 years ago?" The Lord replied that it was probably just a vain struggle of the goddess. It was nothing to them with weapons, but still one should not underestimate the opponents. And importantly, as the Overlord added, this cannot be ignored. Their army must be careful if they want to conquer Enteria. Also, this Overlord has a name, Dianar, and he is a high priest, a warrior of the Demon King's army, a member of the Big Four. The demon told the werewolf to give this information to Tantar. The werewolf immediately left the place, thinking that, having dealt with the annoying soft bodies, they were faced with the appearance of new heroes. This was quite unexpected news for them. However, he realized that it didn't matter that much, because he already had a plan ready to finish them off once and for all. The demon realized that he now had an extravagant plan. The main thing was to conquer these lands at the coordinate points of Entheria. Once they occupied all such places, this world would be completely at the mercy of the demon land. And importantly, as Dianar emphasized, Enteria would definitely be theirs this time. After a while, Tyler began to come to his senses, trying to figure out what had even happened. Marcel, seeing that his friend was awake, afterward asked how he was feeling. When he woke up, the young man didn't quite understand what had happened to him, for everything seemed strange enough. The boy immediately jumped up and asked what had become of the werewolf. But his friend told him to calm down. They had already won long ago. The fact was that Marcel had given Tyler the potion because he was running out of mana. But still, his older companion felt that there was something strange about the situation. It was from that point on that things went a little differently than they had originally expected from that ability. A little later, Marcel also added that Tyler had fallen asleep and his friend had not woken him up. To which the boy responded, "Oh, that's how it is." Okay then. The boy did ask what this inseparability was all about and why it was written as if it was the effect of the goddess's blessing. Marcel was slightly taken aback and asked what the goddess's blessing meant. Did the status really say something like that? To which the boy replied, "Exactly! I'll have to look at the status." When he looked more closely, he realized what the goddess's blessing meant. But still, how did it open? The boy clarified, "Only swordsmen could use undivided, right?" The young man replied, "They were suddenly in the game and they were united again." "It's strange," said the boy. Marcel added that it was worth being careful anyway, because with this skill, there was still no telling what might happen next. The friend also thought of something to ask Tyler. The young man immediately interrupted him, saying that as soon as it was dawn, they would move to the next floor. And as the story progressed, they would have to find the parchment. After a while, the lonely girl was walking through the woods, hoping to discover something interesting. The girl pondered that somewhere in places like this, there must be that black crystal. As she approached a certain area, the girl came across a cave. Once inside, she immediately realized that the mineral she was looking for was most likely in one of the stones. Suddenly, she actually found it, realizing that black crystals turn into living creatures and demons. So she would have to get rid of the find as soon as possible. The girl also saw with her own eyes that there were indeed many bones, apparently human remains, near these crystals. After dealing with that very mine, the girl realized that this amount of black crystal would probably be enough, and she wondered if she should get back before it got dark, or it would become very dangerous to walk through the forest. First of all, she needs to get out of this cave she's crawled into behind the mine. Stepping outside, the girl was suddenly surprised to notice smoke somewhere in the distance. She also heard voices coming from there that said, "No, it should be different. Stand over here." And make sure you repeat it exactly like that every time. The girl got closer, sneaking through the bushes. More voices came from there, and they were saying, "He said he wanted to know how to use the non-separation, didn't he?" The girl wondered, what were those voices anyway, and who could be in such a dangerous place? Taking a closer look, she wondered if she should check more closely to see who it might be. She immediately ran up, but thought about the fact that these guys could be dangerous. At first, she would go back and get someone to help her, but inadvertently the girl stepped on her wand, making a noise. The boys immediately heard that something was wrong, and suddenly decided to take a closer look to see who it could be. They hadn't thought about the possibility that it might be a wolf or something like that. The girl was really scared and thought, "Shit, I've spilled like the first coward." At the same moment, the very same guys approached her. They stood in a stupor and couldn't believe that a person could actually be in a place like this. The girl was very much surprised to see two extremely cool people. She realized that these two guys were so handsome. And she also thought about the fact that they looked strange, and it was the first time she had seen clothes like that. Who are they? She couldn't figure it out. The girl thought about the fact that there must be such an event in the game. She said that there were already more than one and not two different ones from the game, so maybe this one was too. The girl looked at them and couldn't understand what these guys were even talking about or what the game was all about, as she suddenly wondered, was this really the creature she had been thinking about? After all, maybe these guys are demons hiding under the guise of humans. The young man said, "Let them try asking for food from her," to which his friend seriously thought. The girl suddenly misheard and wondered if they wanted to eat her. As she suddenly heard someone heading towards her, she wondered what was going to happen to her now. While the girl was still standing there in a stupor for a bit, not sure what to do, the guys just stared at her, not sure what she was even thinking. An unusual little animal came out from behind the bushes, which was very cute. The young man said, "It's just a mouse." Wow, and he was already scared. Marcel added, "Is it small for a mouse?" The kid asked, "Is it really a monster?" As soon as that kid said the word monster, the girl immediately screamed, and she hugged one of the guys. He was even a little startled that she'd come on to him at all. The kid also asked, "What is it with her anyway?" The girl replied that she was very frightened, and she pounced on him, as she did not understand her feelings. The boy said, let him go." After which he looked at his friend and said, "Help him." The boy walked over to the little mouse and gestured for her to get away from them before there was more trouble. Just as suddenly, the kid could find that the mouse understood him and left. The kid said to the girl, "The mouse is gone, so let her calm down already, after all." The young man thought about the fact that the girl had looked at them with such a contemptuous look before, but now everything had changed. He also asked, "Is she really scared of some mouse?" And they thought someone scarier would come out. The girl asked, "Does he really think this is some kind of joke? Some kind of mouse? He doesn't know how scary those mice are, most likely. The thing is, they make creepy noises when they climb on the ceiling, and they also have sharp fangs and an aggressive stare." That is why she will not be able to sit still if she encounters such mice anywhere in her dwelling. Marcel said, well, different people are afraid of different things, so no surprise there. The kid was able to look closely and see that right in front of him, the inventory had popped up along with the system. The young man said, oh, they're very lucky. There's a main quest with Gray and Purgate. Except he doesn't realize what the hell else Alice is. Marcel said, it's probably an NPC, I guess. Tyler asked her how they were going to find this Alice in town, to which she said they were in a complete disaster. Once the girl decided to ask, Alice is a she, actually, the girl replied, to which the boy was surprised, not expecting that this girl was really an NPC. The girl was only proving that Alice from Purgate was her. The young man immediately extended his hand to the girl as an introduction and said, his name is Marcel, and his friend's name is Tyler. He was pleased to meet Alice. The girl was suddenly surprised, for she couldn't understand why the names Tyler and Marcel sounded so strange. The girl asked, he was supposed to spend in Purgate, right? The two of them immediately looked at each other while the girl asked why she had to lead them there in the first place. She was seeing them for the first time, and by the way, where were they from? Marcel said, well, explaining it would be difficult. While the young man said, let him not misunderstand them. After all, they had fought monsters before and decided to rest, and then they met her. That's how it was. The girl suddenly thought that the names sounded very suspicious, and she was now thinking, if I took them to the Purgate, would anything happen? Suddenly, some kind of hissing creature approached these guys. Turning back around, they were able to find a large spider, which unlike the mice looks quite threatening. In addition, it was a level 15 cursed spider. The boys were very much surprised to meet such a creature. Tyler asked, a spider? Where did it even come from? As suddenly, the young man was able to notice that the girl had something glowing for some reason. The guy asked her, why is his backpack glowing? Is that normal at all? The girl immediately went to her backpack and opened it. After that, she realized that she only had black crystals with her, and that was it. Taking a closer look at one of them, she wondered, had he really picked up anything other than those crystals? The girl was very much shocked at what was happening, for she had not expected to make such a mess of the situation. The kid asked, aren't those demonic larvae in general? The girl replied, it looks like it. If you bring them back, will everything be all right? The young man said to her, for now they have no time to think, so they must flee from this place. After which the guys immediately started running away from this giant spider. Tyler turned to Marcel and said, make the magic work and make it fast. He replied, okay, I got it. I'll do it now. Suddenly, the girl who was running with them fell down as she tripped over some rock. The kid ran up to her and asked, is Alice okay? The girl was very much shocked as she dropped something important. She dropped a whole bag of crystals. The young man said not to worry so much as he would get them up right away and everything would be fine. As soon as the kid reached for one of them, an incredibly black radiation began to emanate from the crystals. She suddenly noticed it and was immediately worried. The girl said to him, let him not touch them, for they are very dangerous. The kid had picked up the crystal after all. She was suddenly surprised and didn't understand how such a thing could just happen. But right away, a spider started running up to them while they were dealing with those crystals. Sure enough, the mage pumped up a small spell to stop this monster. Marcel was immediately able to summon a huge fireball with which he wanted to defeat this giant spider. Even still, he thought it might be slightly dangerous, since they were close enough to that spell. But somehow, he will try his best to do his best to destroy the spider without creating a big explosion. After a while, he was still able to set the spider on fire, causing it to begin to suffer greatly from this magical effect. Marcel shouted to everyone, hey, get closer to him! The girl at this point, while running with all these guys, thought, this is all weird. After all, this is the first time she's seen something like this. Besides, nothing happened from that guy taking the black crystal and the other guy using magic without saying the spell. She also wondered that, are these guys really hunter-gatherers like herself? If not, then in that case, who are they? She pondered. I mean, they look unusual enough, and they didn't look like demons, even if they were undercover. She wondered if they were the heroes the prophet had once spoken of. Marcel asked, is he all right at all? But the young man said, in fact, it was hard to hit him without magic. The girl thought at that moment that she would have to stay away for a while. At this point, the spider was still strong enough to do something against those guys, so he started screaming at the top of his voice and said that they would all regret it. And also, the system wrote that the cursed spider used the special skill Rebirth. The boy said, wow, since he hadn't seen something like this in a regular game before. He wondered if such a skill was even available to such a creature. The spider began to approach them with a nonchalant, fearful stare that made it clear he was beyond pissed off at them. The young man realized that the spider was starting to attack, so he grabbed the girl and told her to be more careful next time. Marcel used ice magic to try to pierce the spider. After using the ice arrow, he realized that now the fight would probably end there. And as basically expected, the spider was indeed incredibly damaged by such ice arrows. She was not in the least frightened and wondered if he had killed such a creature in an instant. The girl only wondered if this guy was really a hero, but that one only said that the danger was very close. But still, she couldn't understand who the other person who took the black crystals was then. At that moment, he was saying that Marcel was good and had done well. She thought that she would have to inform the guildmaster about these guys as soon as possible. While she was thinking about it, the young man asked what it was that had happened to her in the first place. Marcel was worried too and asked if she was all right. At one point, the girl just started to fall as she lost consciousness. The kid managed to grab her and asked her what had even happened to her. The girl told the guy with the last of her strength that she got dizzy, so she fell. Marcel noticed that the girl had some kind of wound. He wondered if it was probably the spider's venom. He asked if she could stand. The girl couldn't say anything to them and immediately realized she was nauseous and had trouble breathing. He told her to climb on his back and now they would get to the town she was from faster. She asked him if he knew the place. He replied that they didn't really know how to get to the Purr Gate, but that they would try to get there. The girl stood still, unsure of what she should say to him. Whereupon she agreed with him, and at the same moment they set out on their journey. Right now, the girl wasn't feeling her best. She also realized that the cursed spider's venom only paralyzed, so wasn't particularly dangerous. But if they left her alone, she might just die. She wondered if she should have let them save her at all since she didn't know them at all. The boy asked her which way to turn. Meanwhile, in one of the demonic castles, Dianar said that it didn't look like any of the heroes would be waking up anytime soon. One of his wards replied, "That's right, High Priest." One of the wards did ask why he'd let the guy live. If he's one of the heroes, it's worth killing him right now, isn't it? The demon replied that he just thought it was better to do it this way than the other way. After all, if the hero is not alone, then in that case, to exterminate the others, they can use it as bait. As suddenly, they were all very much surprised by what had just happened. The kid asked where he was even, and he was also interested in a not insignificant question. Who were they anyway? The demon laughed at the situation and said that he was awake at last. Well, in that case, let it be a trick of the mind, he said. In a split second, this very same kid felt incredible pain, and it happened literally in an instant. Dianar asked if Jahar Porter is ready now. The servant replied that yes, that one was ready. But where did they summon him? This question was asked by a man from the Big Four, the captain of Jahar's magic squad. The demon replied that they would do it most likely in the Purr Gate. As for everyone else, let that kid go there. It would be their first present. The girl said they only had a little more to go, just through that forest, and that was it for now. The boy said he was tired because she was heavier than she looked. She got very angry and asked him if he had just called her heavy. She asked him to let go. Marcel asked her if she was all right. Marcel asked her if she was sure she was all right. The young man, crouching near the tree, asked her why he was carrying her, but for some reason she was thanking Marcel for it. The young man asked her why he was carrying her, but for some reason she thanked Marcel for it. The boy laughed and said that this time, since she was yelling like that, she really was cured. Natalia in turn looked at him with a confused look and thought about whether she was really that heavy. Well, she realized, okay, let's get them on the road faster to get to that place. Marcel was very much surprised at what he had just seen. He thought that the city was even bigger in person than he had imagined. They were able to get to that very town, and the views from there were indeed spectacular. She told them that this is the second largest city in Gazelbia, and there's a Purr-Heater base here. Not everyone is a purifier like her. The kids suddenly thought about what it means that Purr Gate is the first city in Heroes of Itheria. And it turns out that this is where the very NPCs are first encountered. And also the city is pretty big for a first, and has a lot of establishments. He pondered that he would have to find the others and find out why they had gotten to a place like this. Well, of course, no matter how you do it, you'll have to find a way to get back home. These guys were spied on by a girl who clearly didn't understand what these guys were forgetting in a place like this. The girl talked about the world being divided into 4 territories, and now they are Gyaris, Amur, Gazelbia, and also Roxiumia. Among them, Gazirbia is at the center and connects all the countries to each other, and so many stateless guilds and factions appear here. The boys were very much surprised as they didn't think there could be so many different things in a place like this. And besides, when they took a closer look at such a place, they realized, are there really so many people in such places? They asked, is there a festival somewhere? The girl, laughing, said, no, foolish one. The fact is that a prophet has come to Gazerbia. They all suddenly wondered, who is this prophet anyway? The girl, limping with a bandaged leg, talked about how he was a man who predicted incidents. Thanks to him, they were able to minimize the losses of the war 7 years ago. The boy looked closely and wondered, is this the war that was written about in the lithograph? Suddenly he said, but a place like this is pretty crowded. The girl interrupted him, saying, he probably meant peaceful. She decided to add, it actually seems that way, because as they saw, there may have been monsters nearby before. Why do they think so in that case? Finally, she added the most important thing. 9 years ago, in 1293, an unknown black hole appeared in the north of Antaria. It was deep in the mountains, so few people could see it. It was also when the very scary creatures that are now called demons or monsters appeared. Each time there were more and more of them. Monsters first emerged from the hole, but after entering it, they were already dead. The mountains began to fill up with the corpses of monsters. In the end, that area became a cursed land where people could not live. Significantly, then there were those who could control the monsters. They're called demons. In the end, a great war between humans and demons unfolded. Listening to the story, the guys realized that in the game it seemed luscious, but in the real world, everything was perceived differently. The girl also added, well, I guess we're done talking about sad things. After all, they had come to the greatest city of Perkith, where the guild he was a member of was located. The guild was quite large, judging by its name. Upon entering the building, Tyler said, wow, what a big building! To which his friend replied, it's like a big greenhouse. Suddenly, someone turned to Alice. Welcome to this sacred place. Turning around, she answered, she was very happy to see their master. The master, whose name was Gabriel, in turn said she was worried because of Alice's long absence. After listening to Alice's story and the people she brought with her, Gabriel gave her verdict. So this is what was in the forest then. The master remarked, indeed, the young man sees that it is so. Well, not that it's exactly like that. The boy standing next to him added, it's more likely they got into the same place together. Gabriel also said, any way you look at it, he is very grateful to all of them. As gratitude, he is willing to do anything they ask in return. The young man pondered, does everything they ask mean anything? If this person is a straightforward guild leader, he must surely know something relevant. So he said, he would like to ask something. The girl immediately jumped into the conversation. Let the master wait for a while. She must tell him something about these people first. Then she turned to the boys and said, let them stand aside and wait somewhere not far away. And don't let them overhear their conversation. Tyler wanted to ask why she was barging in the middle of a conversation, and Marcel added, and really, what is it? Master also inquired, does that mean those people can safely take black crystals? Soon, Alice was able to tell everything, and Gabrielle said, okay, magic is one thing, but taking crude black crystals is weird enough. The girl added, and that's not the only thing that's weirdest. They don't understand what's even going on. The master wondered, for example, what year is it? Suddenly it came to her. Did those guys? At that moment, the girl said, probably those whom the prophet called heroes are exactly those guys. The master suggested, it looks like he's about to utter a new prophecy. So we should check with him just in case. This sorcerer, who had the blessing of the goddess, must know something. They began to think over everything they had just learned. First off, they got into the world of Heroes of Antoria, but the content was a bit different from the game. Second, Tyler thought, there was a high probability that there had to be 3 other heroes somewhere. And third, of course, they didn't know how to get back home. The young man pondered, this is all very strange. Perhaps the most important thing is to find these 3 and come back. The kid emphasized, that's most likely the case. It would be good if the guildmaster knew something about it. Suddenly, they noticed some girl heading towards them with determination. She even panicked a little. The girl with the beautiful and sweet face seemed to want to ask something. Walking up to the guy almost closely, she asked who he was. He immediately replied, "He's finally met you. These are the very heroes who will save the world." They were both in genuine shock, not realizing what was going to happen this time. The girl immediately noticed it and asked, "Mistress Fiona, what is she doing?" As ordinary people strolled through the city, they were eagerly awaiting the next great speech. The girl whose name was Lola was very humble and excellent. Together with the deity, she could foresee a little future. The whole nation rejoiced, saying, "This gift will be just wonderful this year." The girl looked at the people and realized that they were all happy to finally hear a new message from the Lord. The guards called the people to silence as a speech was about to be made. Everyone started whispering, "Okay, we have to be quiet." The girl began with a greeting. "Thank you all for coming to this performance. She has a very important announcement for them all." She predicted that the very heroes would appear. Finally, the prophecy came true. The girl suddenly wondered, "Are they really heroes?" The kid said, "It seems like things are picking up." To which his friend replied, "Don't look at it like that." "How did he even know this was going to happen?" The girl continued, "The heroes who will save us are—" But suddenly there was a huge explosion, interrupting the entire ceremony. The young man realized that this was probably not part of the performance. The master and the girl were extremely surprised at what was happening, for in their village everyone lived in peace and harmony. Soon the soldiers noticed that crystals with black magic had come to them, portending trouble in their territory. The girl reflected that she couldn't think of anything worse right now. The boys were screaming, perplexed as to what was going on here, and a friend of one of them suggested that the town had been attacked by monsters. Alice said that the monsters had broken through the city barrier, and the master, feeling the heavy energy from the crystal shard, decided that there were many black crystals somewhere nearby. Gabriel said he was going back to the guild to fix the barrier, and the others were to help the warriors evacuate the people. Everyone promised to do their best. Soon the priestess was under guard, and all the guards were trying to protect her, even though the priestess didn't really want to. At this time, some unknown person was near Tyler and Marcel. The young man took a closer look and realized it was the same man who had been with him for 10 whole years. It was Clinch. The two heroes were extremely surprised by what they saw. But despite this, they also noticed that all the people were disturbed by the events and were in a state of panic. Tyler realized that Clinch looked exactly as he had imagined him, as did Marcel. Marcel just couldn't understand why Clinch was now working for the side they were fighting against. Suddenly, someone broke into the gate, and it was immediately clear that there was a crowd of monsters. The heroes began to suspect that the situation might be overkill since someone is trying to break in on them. The black crystal nearby the gate began to spark with lightning. Soon a horde of orcs and goblins, clearly hostile and eager to take over the place, rushed out of the gate. They were running with great speed, and it was clear that they intended to kill quite a few people. In the midst of this problem was a man lighting some birds, and his intentions were clearly not good. Soon orcs and goblins stormed the square and decided to take over the first part of the city. The commander ordered all the soldiers to fight and not retreat. After all, these were low-rank monsters, and one must hold out until the barrier was restored. Soon, one of the orcs tried to attack one of the warriors of the city. A real scary battle began, and the two heroes realized that perhaps Clinch had set it all up, though it was unclear why. The guy under control started attacking the other two in front of him. They dodged, but Marcel couldn't understand why this was happening to one of their brothers. Missing, the guy began to realize that he should calm down and make the best of it for the Lord. Tyler was perplexed as to why exactly Clinch was attacking them, assuming it was some sort of sorcery. He thought that a guy who had been a good person in his mind for 10 years could not have become such a scoundrel, capable of even physical violence against his friends. Marcel turned to Tyler, saying he would deal with Clinch afterward, but now he would help the others get out of here. The guy was surprised and asked if he really thought he could defeat Clinch alone. At that moment, he noticed a black crystal right beside him. Tyler remembered the girl's words that this crystal was poisonous and could kill a normal person if touched. He decided to draw his sword and run up to the crystal, realizing that the situation could become deadly if someone approached him. The young man realized he needed to break the crystal so no one would get hurt. While Tyler ran towards the crystal, Marcel fought the wedge as slowly as possible to get a handle on the situation. Clinch moved in earnest with each blow but remained silent and didn't change in his face, which was suspicious. Marcel realized he couldn't even use magic against Clinch that close, not even magic. At that moment, Clinch swung at Marcel, trying to hit him. Marcel was hurt and went to the ground hard. He began to realize that he might not be able to defeat Clinch, for he was too serious an opponent. Clinch approached Marcel slowly, clearly understanding nothing and emotionless. He tried to step on the guy, but he covered himself with his magic. At this time, Tyler finally tried to destroy the black crystal. The girl was surprised to see what the guy was about to do. She realized he wanted to touch the crystal again. The young man gripped his sword tighter and struck the huge rock, wanting to shatter it into small pieces. He put all his strength into the blow, trying to do his best to destroy the crystal. Suddenly, something strange happened, and the young man and the girl did not realize where he disappeared to. After the guy pierced the stone with his sword, it simply disappeared without leaving a trace. It turned out that the crystal had pushed the young man far away from that spot. Then the rock began to shatter into pieces, scattering the boys to different locations. The girl tried to shield herself from the blast. She had never seen stones of this size before, for such stones are not found in caves. Noticing that something was wrong with Tyler, she decided to run up to him. As he approached, the girl wanted to ask how he was feeling, for she didn't know what would happen after touching the crystal. She was badly frightened, not realizing what was happening or what the next steps might be. Marcel was able to take control of the situation and shouted and asked Clinch if he didn't remember him and Tyler, but he only remained silent. Suddenly, Clinch said Tyler's name seemed very familiar to him, but he couldn't remember whose it was. At this point, he wondered why he was even doing this, and then some rope flew at him. The guy didn't realize what was happening, and the rope was choking him by the throat. It was one of the demons who realized that things were getting hot and decided to use the rope against Clinch so he wouldn't realize anything. The demon realized that he would have to take matters into his own hands. He decided to take Clinch to them, realizing that hypnosis wasn't a very reliable thing if someone recalled the right memories. The young man panicked and screamed, asking where it was that Clinch was being taken. Clinch began to watch Marcel and gradually remembered that he really knew him. Marcel immediately understood why Clinch was acting this way, realizing that he was clearly being controlled by someone.
Pet the cat.